Hey everybody, how you doing? This is Jim Grzanzio from the Oracle Groundbreakers team, and I'm back here for a really special guest today, an interview with Simerjeet Singh. I met Simerjeet in December of last year, 2019, at Sangam 19, which is Oracle developer, actually it's an Oracle user group conference in India. It was a beautiful conference. It was massive, it was big, it was a lot of fun, and Simerjeet was the keynote speaker. So Simerjeet, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you for having me back again. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation post the keynote. You know, when you come off stage and you're full of that energy, and that's when we have that conversation. That's some of the conversations that I really love, because no matter how well you prepare, there is always something that is left unsaid at the end of something like that. And that interview that I had with you was an opportunity to say those things which perhaps were left out. So it's a pleasure to be back again. We were speaking about the VUCA world, and that was sort of the subject of the keynote in Hyderabad. VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And we were speaking more from a disruption point of view, right? Technical disruption. And no one saw coronavirus coming. No one saw COVID-19 coming. No one imagined 60% of the world's airplanes would be sitting on the ground for the next so many months, and the whole world as we know it would change, Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been amazing, because I mean I've been wanting to follow up with you for a couple of specific reasons. One of the reasons is because you and I met physically right at the dividing line between old world and new world, right?
That's right.
The second thing is I wanted to follow up with you because I attended your keynote. I was very impressed with it. I was very impressed with you, and a couple of reasons why. Not only with how you you captivated the audience and how you managed that whole process, and the information you delivered was a lot of fun as well. But after the keynote, you and I had a conversation, right? An interview. I saw you walking the hallways, talking to people, and then I just assumed you would disappear, right?
No, that's not me. That's not me.
Exactly. So this, later on, many hours later on, we're having dinner, and there you are at dinner. This is like nine hours later. Okay.
Right.
And I said to myself, wait a minute here, keynote speakers come and go because they're special and stuff. So you and I actually had a nice conversation at dinner as well. And so I was very, very impressed with that. There are other keynote speakers who do that, but it is not actually as common as you think. And
I appreciate that, Jim.
So that's why I wanted to hook up with you here. Now, under normal circumstances, okay, with sort of a more normal world that we remember from the past, in technology, and the people that are watching us now are software developers and database administrators. They are technologists of one flavor or another. In their world changes all the time, just rapidly, as a normal state of affairs, right?
Yeah.
So they're used to that. They're used to learning new tools and having to grow because the industry changes so rapidly. Not all industries change as rapidly as high tech, particularly software. Now we find ourselves in a whole new paradigm.
True.
Now we find ourselves where the world underneath us has changed in a very, very significant way. Whether you like it or not, it's happened to you, right? So that's what I want to talk about here. I want to talk about not only how you deal with change and grow so you can, thrive in this new world without getting eaten up, but how do you deal with it when it's really out of your control? So first, let's start off with, how have you adapted?
Thank you. No, it's interesting you mentioned about, staying behind after the keynote and mingling with people. I believe an opportunity to be on stage in front of 1,000 people is a golden opportunity, not only to inspire people, to shake people out of perhaps their comfortable zone thinking, but also to make a connection, to make a real human connection. So one of the major challenges that when you specifically talk about professional speakers like myself is that missing out on that human connection, right? And we were so reliant on being there in person that when the COVID-19 thing happened, so you had to reimagine sort of how the entire thing worked. Now, thankfully for us, we were thinking about putting in a YouTube studio because YouTube, as I mentioned earlier, was happening side by side, parallel to my speaking engagements. And what I would enjoy doing was that post a speaking engagement, there would be thoughts that were left unsaid. There were other things that I wanted to add on, or I wanted to share the same thing in the local language, in Hindi or Punjabi or another language for the masses, which I probably spoke about in English. So I'd come back to my office and just to manage my peaks and valleys. It's really important because when you're on stage in front of 1,000 people, your energy's at peak, your ideas are at peak, you're all fired up, and then it sort of slowly fades away because, hey, and you got to look for the next challenge. So typically it would be until the next speaking engagement came around that I would be in that same state of mind once again. But I found a way around that long back, and that was videos. Let's continue because I believe as a speaker, as an influencer, my first job is to connect the dots and to create content that inspires, and that in itself is a powerful way of marketing. So we don't spend a lot of time in our office, thinking about clever ways to market ourselves. We say, how can we serve? How can we add value to our networks? And that sort of brings on that the connect remains. So it's important, 2 or 3 things here. Number one, to not lose touch with your strengths. And for as a speaker, as an influencer, one of my first jobs is to make observations of daily life and present them to people in a way that they can relate to it and they can look at things in a different way. So when COVID-19 happened, and I think I attended a large conference after the one in Hyderabad, after Sangam, and that was in New Delhi, and that was a branding conference, and 350 people all across the world. And this was around the 22nd of February, and that's when coronavirus has just started coming into India. I came back home 4 days later, and I started hearing the news. I was like really worried, because I met people from all across the globe, but then thankfully nothing happened. And then the government announced the major national lockdown. So we didn't see it coming, in terms of that this is going to be such an aggressive response to this thing. So I feel, Jim, if we look at this magnifying glass, wherever we focus our energy, whatever we focus on, it becomes bigger. We human beings, by virtue of concentrating our energy, of our creative imagination, we can major breakthroughs when we decide, okay, this is the direction I'm going to focus on. So as soon as we accept this has happened, this is the new reality. There's nothing I can do to change this. And fear is not an option. Once you got to remind yourself, fear is not an option, because when I invite fear in, I make wrong choices. Look at what happened in many countries across the world where people were fighting in supermarket aisles over toilet paper, right? That's nothing else but our primal instinct of fear. I mean, look at the priorities of people fighting over toilet paper or over everything else. And that just says how grossly wrong we can be when we allow fear to be the predominant emotion. So I think it was a conscious decision not to overwhelm myself with sort of the negative information that was coming in, to sort of control the intake of news, social media inputs, and because fear spreads. It's contagious. It's contagious. And then people add their own little bit in, we project our own fears onto the world. And by the time you realize it's snowballed into something really big, far bigger than what it actually is. Now, I'm not saying people should not take precautions or, other sort of things that the governments across the world have been talking about, but at the same time, to not allow this fear to overwhelm your system. So that was a conscious choice. And then to take it, during that time, say, okay, let's take it one day at a time. What can I do today to add maximum value to my tribe? So we have about 1 million plus people on YouTube, another 200,000 on Facebook, etc. There's a tribe of people who want to hear from me. who look up to me, and my words could soothe, could inspire, could shift, and I took it as a sense of responsibility that this is the time. I don't know who said this, but there's a wonderful leadership quote which goes something like this. The true strength of a captain is tested not in calm waters, but in storms. So everyone can be a good captain in calm waters, but it's when a storm hits, it's do you show up or not, number one, and what sort of a mindset do you show up with, and then what value are you adding? So we said, okay, let's take it one day at a time. What can we do today to add maximum value to our tribe, to our online tribe? What can we do today to make sure that things are on track for what we're doing? And how can we focus on our circle of influence? And Dr. Stephen Covey, he gave this beautiful model in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said you could divide your worries into 2 categories: things that you're concerned about and you can't control them, right? You have no control over them whatsoever, but you can, if you choose to, spend your entire day worrying about the outcomes of those things, but you have zero control over them.
Right.
He said, these things are your circle of concern. And in the middle of the circle of concern is a small, tiny circle that's your circle of influence. These are things that you control on a daily basis. What sort of an attitude do you wake up with in the morning, right? What are your priorities at the moment? How well are you going to, where are you going to spend your time? Where are you going to focus on? These are choices that we get to make. There's a wonderful book, Jim, that I must recommend to everyone who's listening or watching. It's called Man's Search for Meaning, Dr. Viktor Frankl. Profoundly changed my life. Holocaust survivor, this gentleman was a psychiatrist, and 2 years he was in the Nazi prison camps, and he observed human behavior under the most extreme circumstances ever. And he wrote this beautifully. The book is wonderful. And he said a couple of lines which have stayed with me ever since. He said, one of the last human freedoms is the freedom to choose your attitude under any given circumstances. One of the last human freedoms. He said, regardless of the circumstances, we always have the choice what attitude do we choose. And that sort of, I believe, Jim, is sort of the foundation of everything else. What do you achieve in a given day? If you're in a leadership position, how are you impacting other people? If you have a family that's looking up to you for guidance and support and inspiration at this point of moment, what are you giving to them? So it's really important to take care of yourselves during this time. So that's one of the first things. I prioritize that. Before that, it was for granted. Simerjeet Singh is there. Okay, we got to take care of the other things. We got to take care of the keynotes, of the slides, of everything else, everything. But okay, he's here. But then COVID-19, the great leveler. Put everybody on this. Yeah, it doesn't distinguish.
That's a really good way of putting it. It certainly has flattened out a lot of industries and a lot of ways of looking at things. Like, for instance, I noticed that you are a very strong personality. You're very assertive. You're very bold, and other people aren't necessarily so strong, so bold. But with the flattening out of everything is more equal now, I guess, right? We all have access, in this field anyway, all have access to this, sort of technology. But tell me about some of your thoughts about how people who aren't necessarily used to change, or who may be a little bit more shy or not as bold as someone like yourself. You're very grand, you're strong, you're bold, you get up there and you...
that's how I appear to be from the outside. I'm pretty much just like everyone else on the inside.
Okay, but right. you see somebody like, for instance, with engineers and software developers or community, software, people in the tech business, many of them are noticeably internal. They're noticeably internally focused. They're not as out there. They may be very powerful individually when they write software with advanced tools, and they form these communities and they contribute code, but their personalities, a lot of them are shy. A lot of them are geeks. They're inwardly focused, And
nothing wrong with that. Some of the most creative people on this planet are people who are either ambiverts or introverts. They retreat into their shell every now and then, come up with great ideas, and that's how they function best. Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, just any thoughts about, are those types of people from your experience, do they have to do other things to get themselves out to be able to embrace this situation?
They're a little more. They're a little more vulnerable than the rest of us because perhaps they at times tend to keep a lot of stuff to themselves, which I don't think is healthy, given especially these circumstances when there's a lot happening. So I do believe that technology does run the world. Technology is an enabler. Technology is empowering you and me to have this conversation continents apart right now, and many more to listen, to tune into it later on, but also to understand that human beings run the world and human beings create the technology, and we're still here, although artificial intelligence is fast catching up, but we're still here, and that human connection is one of our top psychological needs. I would recommend everyone to spend some time, about 15 minutes, to watch Tony Robbins speak on the 6 human needs. And Jim, he simplifies psychological needs into very simple things, 6 very simple requirements. Number 1 is certainty. We all want a little bit of certainty from our life. If I've bought a new house and it's going to be still standing there 2 years from now, or if I've worked a couple of months in a new company, that I would get paid at the end of it. You remove certainty from a human being's life, and we sort of shake up the entire world of an individual. Number 2 is variety. That we crave for different things. That's hence adventure, hence travel, hence so many other things. So these contradictory needs are there. These are 2 of the basic requirements. But at the same time, there is growth. There's a need for growth. There is a need for contribution. That research proves that we feel really good about ourselves when we brighten up someone else's day, right? And so it's growth, it's contribution, it's connection and love, another top human psychological requirement. Hence, the need for family, social connection, or even pets or gardening or plants or whatever it happens to be. And finally, the need for significance, that my existence makes a difference to the world. So if you look at these 6 needs, many of them have been compromised due to the lockdown and other situations across the world. Many of us have lost the certainty about our jobs and our businesses and so many other things. Variety is gone, adventure is gone, travel is gone, dining out is gone. But at the same time, we must understand that these are the foundation forces of how the mind work. These are 6 things and many more, but the list is not exhaustive. But these 6 things have a major impact on how we are feeling in a given day. So introvert or extrovert or ambivert, we've got to understand and spend time with ourselves and find out. It's just like problem solving. Go a few layers deep. If you're feeling nervous, or if you're feeling irritated, or if you're feeling sad or depressed, to go at the root cause. What is happening in my environment, or what is happening around me, or what's happening in a given day that has brought me to this feeling? Because everything on the surface just might be a trigger, and the root cause might be a few layers deep. So it helps to spend time in meditation for everyone, extrovert or introvert. And I'm not talking about chanting. I'm not talking about any particular mantras or any particular techniques. I'm talking about sitting calmly, reflecting on your life, and trying to just learn from your mistakes, and trying to discover the triggers which put you into that mood, and trying to, the 6 human needs exercise, for example, to understand, if I felt good on a given day, what happened? Did I have a conversation with someone? The other person wasn't feeling so good, and I lifted that individual. And as a result, I felt better about myself. Let me do a bit more of that. Let me just reach out to my LinkedIn connections, or do something of that sort, or organize a Zoom call or something. If variety is missing, if dining out is missing, if travel is missing, if adventure is missing, I tried this during the lockdown, more houseplants across in the office and everywhere. And it gives me great joy to switch off, move from the screen every now and then, to water the plants and to do something. It's like they add life to the concrete. So you've got to think of creative ways to figure out and to fill in and to heal yourself and to fill in the gaps of what might be missing in your life at the moment. And that applies to everyone. I think self-reflection is the key. Self-reflection is the key. As you rightly said, different human beings with different temperaments, different ways of looking at the world. Some of us have spent a lot of time building our mindset up in a positive way. Some of us probably did not get that time ever in the race of making things happen. So now is your time, but self-reflection is the key. I mean, no one can tell you what's best for you, but when you begin to spend time with yourselves and sort of ask yourselves the right question, you get the right answers. And that's really important to figure out what might be working for me, might not work for another individual, but it's important that you ask yourselves the right question. For example, the question, what's going to become of me? What's going to become of the world in 6 months' time is a scary question. Wrong question. Wrong question.
Open-ended.
Yeah,
kind of,
open-ended, and primarily focused on things which you can't control.
You can't control.
What's going to become of the world in 6 months? Well, no one can tell, right? Not even the best statistician, best astrologer cannot predict what's going to happen. How am I going to go the next week? What are the sort of things I want to do to brighten up my day? Or, I call it morning decisions. This is one thing I would highly recommend to everyone. Spend 30 minutes with yourself, 15, 5, 10, put on your favorite piece of music, meditate, run, jog, do whatever you can. Morning decisions, visualize yourself. How are you overcoming the sort of usual challenges that show up in your given day? Visualize yourself overcoming those challenges in a creative way. Decide, I'm going to have a good day today, right? When you go to a stand-up comedy, right, Jim, and you can probably relate with this, you've sort of made up your mind, I'm going to have a good laugh today. Is that a yes or no? Do you agree with that, right? You don't go there as a critic. I'm going to critique what this guy is talking about and say, hey, that's not so funny, right? And because everybody else is laughing, you join in, it's contagious, and everybody ends up having a good time, right? And one of the things where we participated in that exercise was we went in with a positive expectation, with a mindset, hey, it's stand-up comedy, and I'm going to laugh and have a good time. If we incorporate that same mindset in a given day, say, okay, here's another opportunity, here's another day. And the reason why I focus on the day aspect every now and then again, quote unquote, the day, is because a day is a reflection of your life. A day is a microcosm of your life. How you're spending your days is how you're spending your life by and large. And if you want to make changes in how you're spending your life, you've got to make changes in how you spend your days, right? So work on the day, brighten it up. And as a result, you will see the results will overflow into the other aspects of your life.
A couple of things you said there I want to follow up on. You, especially because I think they're really applicable to, people in software communities. You mentioned contribution a little bit earlier. When I did my interviews at these conferences, one of the, when we were live, one of the things I always ask developers is, what's your understanding of a community, of a software development community, or a user group community, or a database community? Mm-hmm. And they always answer, and I don't mind that the answer is always the same because I just want to hear it. It's always expressed a little bit differently, but the core is the same. The fact that they can contribute, right?
Right.
So somebody within the community, it makes them feel special that they can contribute, whether that's source code, engineering talent, bug fix, advice, conversation, mentoring, photographs, like I do.
Yep. Of course. I still have them, by the way. Wonderful photographs, Jim. Thank you.
That's one of my contributions because, I like it, and it's something I can do. And so believe me, you don't want me writing your, code for your, system.
But if just the fact that you're recalling all that right now is sort of shifting how you're feeling, right? And you're feeling good about recalling all those moments. And that's the power of contribution. That's the power. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And so people in software communities, they express the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I ask them over and over and over and over again, is the power of being able to contribute to community, because then they get something out. They get something out of the community. And it's a self-referral process.
True.
The second thing I wanted to focus on is focus, the ability to focus. Mm-hmm. You had the magnifying glass earlier.
Yeah.
To me, this is a struggle in many things. So in many senses, because the mind is designed to think, right? It's going to be thinking all
over the place. Yeah. Right. Everywhere. Mm-hmm.
And it's the essence of being able to relax and to transcend your current circumstances to be able to focus. Talk a little bit more about focus, because for instance, a developer, when they write code, their goal many times is to get very deeply into concentration.
Right.
Okay. Because you can't solve really hard technical problems on the surface flitting about here with the TV on and the phone ringing and on social media. You can't hold that way. You gotta settle down. You gotta get more deep. To me, that sounds like the process of meditation.
Right. It is indeed. Yeah.
It is. It is a form of meditation. It's a form of
it's cutting everything out and focusing on. Yeah, I agree.
So, so talk a little bit about your experience in focus.
It's vital for me, especially, Jim, when I'm pouring my heart into a new project. Let's say it's a new video series or a new keynote or something, that I too need to focus, not necessarily to come up with new stuff, but to sort of look at existing stuff in a fresh way and to connect the dots in a nice new way. It's because I enjoy the process, more than the results itself. So, and the day I stop doing that is the day I will stop loving this profession, because more than being on stage or being on camera or impacting someone else's life, for me, the joy also lies in creating something and putting the dots together, whether it's storytelling or humor or an activity which will help people have that aha moment. So focus for me involves, number one step that I use personally is to remove the clutter. It's really, really important to remove the clutter in every which way. Physical clutter, mental clutter, spiritual clutter. And so once you've decluttered, now you're in sort of a minimalistic sort of space. And the books behind me, by the way, are for what Jack Canfield calls shelf esteem. I haven't read all of them, right? It makes the office look nice, give it that feel. But even with your reading preferences or your watching preferences, you can't take on everything. And in a world which is hyper connected with social media, you've got to actively take charge of this process and remove the clutter, which might involve, for me, it does involve putting my phone on an airplane mode for many hours at a stretch. And I would usually sit down with to organize the flow of my keynotes with a big, huge chart paper on the floor and sort of map it out. This is what I would like to talk to the audience in the middle. This is my beginning. This is my story, and this is etc. So that I'm deeply immersed into it. And what happens is, as a result, the outcome that happens rather than skimming on the surface is very different. So 2 or 3 things. Number one is we've got to invest enough time that sort of the neurons start firing together in that direction and you go to the next level. So what happens is, if you spend 30 minutes in a task and then all of a sudden you're interrupted with a phone call or a tweet or something else, you've lost the hard work that you put in the 30 minutes and now you're back again. So I would say remove clutter during that period of time. And even if you don't feel like, even on the days that you don't feel like, sit down and start doing what needs to be done. And very soon you will see the state of flow takes over. There's a beautiful book by Professor Csikszentmihalyi, Flow, where he talks about, organizing our mental energy. And another very important piece of research I must share here is coming from Professor Jeremy at Harvard University, who said, you're more likely to act yourself into feeling than you are to feel yourself into action. Right. And I think that's worth repeating. You're more likely to act yourself into feeling. But a lot of people are waiting for the feeling to come first. Let me feel focused and I'll act focused. Right. It works the other way. Let me begin to focus and I will feel focused. Of course, a little caffeine helps. Of course, a little exercise helps, and those sort of things, they add on. But so coming back to it, number one is make sure that the hard work that you put into getting into that zone, getting into the state of flow is not interrupted by something which is trivial or irrelevant. Organize your day in that way. Number 2 is start doing what needs to be done. And I think for my videos or writing the scripts for my videos or everything else that is vital, very important, super important to me, I follow the same principle. Let's get into it. And I think 5 or 10 minutes later, so I warm up and then we get into that state of flow and then things begin to really speed up. A lot of people, they switch before that. So that's not the mistake you should do in terms of focus. Number 3, I think it's really important to take breaks. Take good breaks. Yeah. Rest if you must, but don't you quit. If I may, Jim, I'd like to read this poem out, which has been a source of inspiration for me. The Don't Quit poem by John Greenleaf here. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh. When care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is strange with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a failure comes about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you can never tell just how close you are. It may be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when you are hardest hit. It's when things go wrong that you must not quit. And what I really love in this entire poem is rest if you must, but don't you quit. Yeah. Don't underestimate the power of taking a break or spending some time in nature or a good night's sleep. The good night's sleep is the most powerful reset button on this entire planet.
It is shocking what 8 or 10 hours will do to change your state.
Completely. You probably even forgotten, what was I mad about yesterday?
Yes,
you have to start all over again, right? So,
one of the things, as you offer this sort of advice and these perspectives, people should know that you've gone through many changes yourself. And one of the things that, so a lot of this is your own personal experience.
It is.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit about you, because when I met you in India, you said that you had like this major career change. And I was watching one of your other videos recently where you said, yeah, no, I think you were in the restaurant business or hospitality business, and then
that's right, yeah.
And then you moved into this, and
good memory, Jim. Yeah,
no experience, no clients, nothing. So that's a pretty, that's hard to do. I mean, what made you decide to, number one, make the change, and number two, you just jumped? I mean, there was no net, right?
There's no net. And that's the beauty of it. That's what makes it very exciting. And that's what makes it very challenging. And perhaps if I would have had a net, I probably wouldn't have jumped, or I would have spent more time thinking about it. And this is for everyone who's listening right now. Some of the problems cannot be solved by thinking about them. You've got to take that next step. Even if there's huge amount of uncertainty, huge amount of fear, you've got to take the next step just to see how it's going to work out, just to see how it's going to fall into place in the entire scheme of things, and to not be afraid of failure, or to not be afraid of embarrassment, because that's part of the learning process, and not to take any setbacks personally. It's just like a little child exploring to see how far I can push the boundaries. And if you look at it, the education system is designed to teach us out of that. We were all born with that sort of innovator's DNA to explore and do silly things. And that's how we ask irrelevant questions. What adults think are irrelevant questions is exactly the process how a child learns about the world. And somehow we're taught out of that. We're conditioned out of that. We're told it's not, people are not going to take you seriously if you continue thinking like that. But I disagree. We've got to keep that spark alive. We've got to continue this journey of risk taking, and that's how we push the boundaries of our individual lives, and that's how I am doing what I'm doing. Of course, the first part, which was in 2007, 2008, when I left the hospitality business, as you already know, and I moved back to India, that was the first part. And as I reflect back now, February 2020 is going to be the second next major push, which we, the first one we did it willingly. The second one was thrust upon us. But the old Indian story goes, Jim, I don't know if I shared it in the keynote at Sangam or not. And a rich old man announced a competition, so daughters of royalty would get married this way. The strongest, the wisest man would win a competition. And then the king would say, okay, you're fit enough to marry my daughter. And that's how things operated in ancient India. So you probably might have heard the story. So this old rich man in ancient India announced a competition. He said the man who wins it, the young man who would win this competition, would not only get my daughter's hand in marriage, but also 50% of all my wealth. I would sign it to to his name on the spot, which was a pretty good offer, right, Jim? People would show up. Married folks would show up. Let me try. Simerjeet's been talking about move outside the comfort zone. So as he anticipated, a crowd of thousands gathered around a huge pool of water. And he said, the first young man to jump in from this side and emerge alive from the other side is going to be the winner. And there was a catch. The pool was full of alligators, right? And as soon as he's announced this, he heard a loud splash. Someone's jumped in already, and the whole crowd is cheering him on. Yes, you can do it. And this guy is swimming with all his might, and he's making his way through the alligators unhurt, surprisingly, not a scratch. Emerges from the other side. The old man runs up to him to welcome him to the family, says, son-in-law, welcome. He said, sir, hold it right there. I don't even like your daughter. I don't want your money. Right at this point of time, I want to find out who pushed me into the swimming pool. And we've all been pushed. Students across the world have been pushed. Teachers have been pushed. So businesspreneurs. And 2020 Feb as a keynote speaker, I had to change on my description on LinkedIn from international keynote speaker to virtual keynote speaker, right? And that's the sort of transition. Very proudly, I would carry this bag with me, Jim. This was my carry-on bag with major airlines across the world with the platinum tag, proudly displayed as a frequent flyer. The interesting part is I don't use this bag anymore, and the airline doesn't exist anymore. That's how Jet Airways gone out of business. Kaput, finished. Oh, yeah. That's how much the world has changed. So what do you do? It's not only a fight for survival, but it started off as a fight for survival, but then evolved into finding out, wow, this is wonderful. Dr. Wayne Dyer, he said it beautifully, Jim. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you're looking at begin to change. When you change the way you look at things, the things you're looking at begin to change. So once we did our first virtual keynote, which was using a regular built-in camera on the laptop, which was, not equal to the quality that you're seeing right now. But I had an aha moment. I said, look, I don't need to travel anymore. I could do this remotely, sitting where I am right now, spend more time building up content and doing the other sort of things that we could not do the last 8 years just because I was traveling so extensively. So once I made that shift in how we process it, I think the famous Greek philosopher Seneca, he said it, events don't have any meaning on their own. No event has its meaning on its own. We give them meaning, right? So it depends upon that meaning. What are you going to make of that event? So I changed. I said, look, this is an opportunity to spread out. And we've done more interviews, more podcast interviews, more YouTube videos, more virtual conferences, more video messages. We sent out, we put out a post on LinkedIn saying, if you've been one of our clients, and we've had more than 300 over the last 13 years, and if you would like a customized 5-minute inspirational video message for you, we would film it in high quality and send it to you free of cost. That's what we told 300 plus of our existing clients. And so many wrote back, say, hey, could you talk about this and talk about that? And every day we were filming 7 or 8 short video messages without charging our clients a single penny to say, hey, we are here for you. You were there for us the last 13 years. You gave me work the last 13 years. And now that your teams are suddenly trying to find the ground beneath their feet, I am here for you, right? In whatever way I can. So that sort of kept us busy. It's really important to figure out creative ways to channelize your energy positively. So even when virtual sort of conferences were not coming in, just the early days of the lockdowns, we utilized our time doing that. So this is the next big shift. And gradually we've evolved. We said, okay, let's bring a new DSLR. You were very helpful. Thank you, Jim, for all your suggestions on how to improve the video quality. I saw your live streaming, how to improve the audio quality. We're still working on it, how to use different software so we can put in presentations and videos on the screen while I'm speaking to people. It's been a nice learning curve. And I'll tell you something. Every little piece of progress that we've made, the excitement of a little child. So that evening, me and the team would be really excited. Woohoo! The lighting looks better, the sound looks better. We can now present using a green screen, or we can now present videos, etc. And that brings me to another very important aspect of human nature. We are driven by progress. We love progress. Tony Robbins' 6 human needs, growth is one of them, right? So do something every day which improves the quality of what you're doing so that you feel good about it. It's not to impress the boss. It's not to, you're not doing it for someone else. You're doing it for yourself. And every little improvement that you make is going to sort of in some way raise your self-esteem about who you are as an individual, what choices you are making as an individual. It's not about someone else. So if we kept on doing that. I live about a 5 minutes walk away from my office. I'm in my office right now. And every morning during the last, I think it's 7 months of the lockdown, haven't traveled anywhere. I would still I wear formals when I present on stage. So I would still dress up in the morning, wear my formals, and go to office. So many people.
That's so important. You know,
Thank you.
I see some of these people on live, on the video, and they look like they just walked out of bed. Come on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because the mind is trained, it understands. So this perfume right here, the Terre de Hermes, I'm not marketing, I'm not advertising it, but it's been my on stage, before I go on stage. So it's been my anchor. In NLP, they talk about anchors. Right. Smell is a powerful anchor. It can take you back in time, and music is a powerful anchor. And for the last 13 years, every time I would go on stage, I would have this perfume on. So what do I do now during this difficult 7 months? Every morning I put this perfume on just to make sure that my mind is trained to give the very best, right? So it's really important during this time to look after yourself and to do the very best you can, and then call it a day, and don't not to carry on anything during the day, and not worry about too much about things that you cannot control. Just do the best you can every given day here.
Right. So when you and I met, we were in Hyderabad, right? For the Sangam conference. So are you from Hyderabad? You mentioned the UK, I think, or... So where are you now?
I am in Jalandhar in Punjab, which is far away from all the metro cities, far away from all the high-tech companies. Punjab is known for agriculture. Jalandhar is a tier 2 city in India, so I'm not in a metro, and that's another interesting story. Whenever I speak to youngsters here or anywhere across the world, location has now become irrelevant. With this whole digital thing, location is irrelevant. Skills and what value you can add, that's going to create a new sort of order in terms of whatever services you're providing. So it's largely, as long as we have a good Wi-Fi, a good high-speed internet connection, is really irrelevant wherever you are. And I think it's a blessing in disguise. Many years, everybody would say, okay, why don't you move to a bigger city? Life would be a lot easier. But since we have roots in the area and sort of I like it here, it's not overcrowded, it's closer to nature. And there's a beautiful view from the office. Let's see if we can show you that. You turn the camera around a little bit here at this side. Okay, it's very bright right now, but you can see that's all those. I know you can't see, but it's all the trees over there.
There we go. Yep.
There
green,
we go.
Yep.
Yeah, green, completely green. And that's one of the best things I like about being here. So, and also the fact that very little traffic, small city, I get to spend time on what I really want to do. So again, decluttering. This was a conscious decision. Yeah.
Cool. Very little traffic. I've been to India many times, and very little traffic is not a concept that I've ever experienced.
Yeah.
When we were I was on the Yatra tour, the Oracle Groundbreakers Yatra tour, with the Indian community, that we have there. It's a very, very big community. It's great. We went to 6 cities. The whole tour was 10. I couldn't make all 10. And we were planning to do, Sai Penamunu was planning to do 12 cities this year.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go on all 12. Right. And then, 2020 happened.
That's right.
You mentioned something a little bit earlier I also wanted to follow up on. It's very, very important for people, and I'm glad you mentioned it, is this, you feel good when you've accomplished something, right? Like you're talking about cameras and the audio and stuff like that. It's basically having a builder's mindset. You're building something. I used to be in the construction business, so I'm a developer from that perspective. That's the term we use as a developer.
Yeah, DNA. It's in your DNA.
Absolutely. And I've worked at research facilities with scientists and physicians and veterinarians, and I've worked in high tech with engineers. They're very similar mindset in the sense of building. They have a construction mentality. They're sitting behind a keyboard writing code that is intended to construct something, to build something. That's why
build something new.
Developers. And I find when I do that, I mean, you seem to be reflecting that. When I do that, I can lose myself in that, and then I feel a lot better than than not actually being able to just be at the whim of things. And all these developers that we are interacting with feel in a similar way, essentially. The ability to build something, to take yourself out of the circumstance and go into the keyboard, into the tool, and actually build something new. So it's a mindset. It's a mindset, I think, that's very, very important for people to realize. And I was happy that you were sort of reflecting that, basically saying that that's what you experienced as well.
Is. It is, because it's giving us that indication that I'm making some progress, I'm doing something, I'm achieving something. And without that, life tends to become meaningless. I go back to this beautiful book that I referred to earlier, Man's Search for Meaning, from Dr. Viktor Frankl. And he espoused a whole theory about psychotherapy, which is called logotherapy. And logos in Greek means purpose, right? Having a sense of meaning. So his entire focus was, when you find a sense of meaning and purpose, everything else sort of fades into the background. And he said during the 2 years or plus that he spent in the prison camp, the Nazi prison camp, his purpose was, he had his wife's photograph with him in his wallet, and he would look at every now and then at his wife's photograph, and he would visualize in his mind meeting her again, or leaving the camp. And that's exactly what happened when the Allied forces arrived. And but that thought in itself was powerful enough to carry him through some of the most gruesome things that were happening around him. So human life, when we get a sense of purpose, when we get a vision, I think that's also really important, Jim. Apart from this regular improvements, the builder's mindset, really, really powerful. That's execution. It's to bring that vision to reality. But also what's very important is to have something to look forward to. Very important. And we overlook it. We get so caught up in the to-do list and what's happening, the flow of things as they're coming to us, that we forget, where do I really want to go? So please spend time taking care of that. I keep a diary, which is my I call it the manifestation diary. And what I do is every now and then I spend time writing about every aspect of my life into this. How would I like my finances to be? Okay, it's 2020. This should have been a different coronavirus special edition. But I pick every aspect of my life, my morning routine, my exercise, my fitness, and things like that I would like to accomplish this year, which I haven't done before. How would I want my relationships, my career, my clients, et cetera, and then I write the ideal scenario, right? And then every now and then, when I life tends to feel meaningless, or I'm feeling low, and yes, motivational speakers can feel low as well. We are as human as everybody else. But what's important is that you have a mechanism to pull yourself out of it, and this serves as that mechanism. This sort of, what do I really want? I talked about it in the keynote at Sangam as well. This is a regular habit. I do it every now and then, put on my favorite piece of music and visualize all these things happening in my life. And that gives my mind a mental image to look forward to. Without this, life begins to feel empty. It's like, okay, I don't know where I'm heading. My circumstances control me, and that is incorrect. Your circumstances do not control you. You're not a victim. You're a co-creator. You're the co-author of your own journey. So take charge and figure out a direction, and every now and then look at it and see what progress you've made. So that sort of helps you keep yourself on track.
Okay. Well, Simerjeet, thank you very much for talking with me today. I occasionally flip through the Gita, and I always think of you when I take my own. Actually, when I take my Gita and I flip through it, and so it was really great to meet you last year.
Likewise, Jim.
And hopefully in the future we can meet again live.
Yeah.
But until then, we'll do this. And thanks a lot for your advice. And I hope people have enjoyed it as much as I have.
Thank you so much, Jim, for having me. It means a lot to be on this podcast today and to be sharing these views with you. Once again, thank you, really. Thanks a lot.
Cool. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye. Take care.